Before Netflix algorithms figured out what you wanted to watch, television programmers threw everything at the wall to see what stuck. The 1970s witnessed the golden age of the experimental family sitcom, shows that dared to break free from the wholesome suburban template and explore the weird, wonderful, and occasionally unhinged corners of American family life. These weren't your father's Father Knows Best reruns. Number 11. Dusty's Trail, 1973 to 1974. Premise: bumbling wagon train scout gets his group perpetually lost in the Old West while they search for civilization. Bob Denver tried to recreate the lightning-in-a-bottle magic of Gilligan's Island by literally transplanting the exact same character dynamics to the frontier. Sherwood Schwartz, creator of both shows, made zero effort to disguise the formula. Incompetent leader, Denver as Dusty; gruff authority figure, Forrest Tucker as the wagon master; wealthy snobs, sweet girl next door, and glamorous bombshell. The only difference was sagebrush instead of palm trees. The series aired in first-run syndication from September 1973 to March 1974, after all three networks rejected it. A humiliating come-down for Denver, who'd been a television star just years earlier. According to U.S. television researchers Tim Brooks and Earl Marsh, the reason for the show's failure was that it was too obviously a rewrite of Gilligan's Island, deeming it a derivative flop. Each episode followed the exact same pattern. The group almost reaches civilization. Dusty screws up, they're back to square one. What made it memorably awful was the complete lack of chemistry between the cast members, who seemed to realize they were trapped in television purgatory. Denver professed on several occasions that Dusty's Trail was his favorite show to perform, which either demonstrated admirable professionalism or complete delusion about his career trajectory. The production budget was minuscule, even by 1973 syndication standards, resulting in sets that looked like community theater backdrops and action sequences that resembled a church pageant. The show's legacy exists primarily as a cautionary tale about recycling successful formulas without understanding what made them work in the first place. From 10, The Texas Wheelers, 1974 to 1975. Premise: cantankerous father returns after 8 months of drinking to reunite with the children he abandoned in rural Texas. MTM Enterprises, the production company behind The Mary Tyler Moore Show and The Bob Newhart Show, attempted to prove their dramatic range with this earthy family comedy starring Jack Elam as the ornery patriarch. The show featured future Star Wars icon Mark Hamill as middle son Doobie and pre-fame Gary Busey as eldest brother Truckee, making it a time capsule of Hollywood before anyone became famous. The series premiered September 13, 1974 in the deadly Friday night, 9:30 p.m. slot opposite NBC's powerhouse, The Rockford Files. ABC executives essentially programmed the show to fail, placing it between two genre shows, The $6 Million Man and Kolchak, The Night Stalker, where family comedy had no logical place. The show was canceled after 4 episodes in fall 1974, with 4 additional episodes airing during summer 1975. The most fascinating element was casting Jack Elam, Hollywood's go-to menacing villain, as a father figure. Elam, known for playing psychotic gunfighters in westerns, brought unexpected warmth to the role of Zach Wheeler. A nice guy, but he's a jerk, according to the actor himself. The character dynamics worked because the children's reactions to their father's return felt genuinely conflicted rather than sitcom simple. According to Mark Hamill, if the Texas Wheelers had been renewed for a second season, he would have been unavailable to play Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. The show's failure literally changed movie history, launching Hamill toward galactic fame instead of MTM obscurity. The theme song was Illegal Smile by John Prine, giving the series more credibility than its brief run deserved. Lots of Luck, 1973 to 1974. Premise: Brooklyn bachelor supports his entire extended family while managing the lost and found department of a city bus company. Dom DeLuise's first starring television role showcased his manic energy in an American adaptation of the British series On the Buses. The show centered on Stanley Belmont's frustration with his lazy, mooching brother-in-law, Arthur, Win Irwin, who refused to work, dressed like a slob, chain-smoked, and ate constantly while living off Stanley's earnings. The domestic arrangements created a powder keg of working-class resentment. Created by Carl Reiner, Bill Persky, and Sam Dienoff, the Dick Van Dyke Show alumni, the series pushed boundaries with sexual innuendo that would make all in the family blush. Arthur's character represented the ultimate freeloader, smart enough to manipulate the system, but too lazy to participate in it. The show explored themes of economic dependency and family obligation that felt uncomfortably relevant during the 1973 oil crisis. NBC initially programmed the show opposite CBS's long-running Gunsmoke, then moved it to Friday nights after Sanford and Son, where it was canceled after one season. The network replaced it with Chico and the Man, proving they understood the working-class comedy market but couldn't figure out DeLuise's particular brand of neurotic energy. The series featured guest appearances from future stars, including Suzanne Summers, plus veteran character actors like Harold Gould and Ruth Buzzi. DeLuise received a Golden Globe nomination for his portrayal of Stanley, recognition that validated the show's quality even as ratings failed to materialize. The writing was crisp and brilliant according to contemporary reviews, with creators selecting only top-tier comedy writers for scripts. Number 8. The Dumplings, 1976. Premise: happily married, overweight couple run a New York deli while radiating unconditional love for each other and life. Norman Lear, riding high on the success of All in the Family and Maude, created this gentle sitcom starring James Coco and Geraldine Brooks as Joe and Angela Dumpling. The show's revolutionary concept: a married couple who genuinely liked each other, never fought, and happened to be fat. In 1976, this qualified as radical television programming, challenging the toxic relationship dynamics that drove most domestic comedies. The series aired on NBC from January to March 1976, totaling only 10 episodes before cancellation. The central challenge was generating comedy from characters who were essentially conflict-free. Joe and Angela's Deli in a midtown Manhattan skyscraper catered to businessmen from the oil company upstairs, but the workplace setting never integrated meaningfully with the domestic storylines. What made The Dumplings historically significant was its representation of non-traditional body types in leading roles. The show refused to make Joe and Angela's weight the source of humor, instead treating them as fully realized people who happened to be larger than typical television stars. This approach was decades ahead of its time, anticipating modern conversations about body positivity and diverse representation. The production faced the fundamental sitcom challenge: where's the conflict? With the central couple radiating contentment and mutual support, writers struggled to generate the tension that drives comedy. Norman Lear later admitted the concept needed stronger dramatic engines to sustain audience interest beyond the novelty of seeing happy fat people on television. Number 7. Apple Pie, 1978. Premise: lonely hairdresser recruits a fake family through newspaper classified ads during the Great Depression. Rue McClanahan, fresh from her supporting role on Maude, received her own star vehicle, courtesy of Norman Lear, in this Depression-era family comedy that lasted exactly 2 episodes. The premise was pure Lear audacity. Ginger Nell Hollyhock, a single hairdresser in Kansas City, Missouri, places classified ads recruiting relatives and assembles a household of professional misfits. The family included con-man husband Fast Eddie Murtaugh, Dabney Coleman, tap-dancing daughter Anna Marie, Caitlin O'Heaney, flying-obsessed son Junior, Daryl Morey, and blind, Roosevelt-hating grandfather, Jack Guilford. Each character answered Ginger Nell's newspaper ads for economic rather than emotional reasons, creating an artificial family unit held together by Depression-era desperation rather than blood ties. ABC scheduled the series Saturday nights at 8:30 p.m., prime real estate that demonstrated network confidence in McClanahan's star power. The production filmed 8 episodes under Peter Boner's direction, but the show was canceled after the September 23, 1978 premiere and 1 additional episode. Industry rumors suggested excessive fighting during production, with cast members either taking roles too seriously or showing insufficient enthusiasm. The concept anticipated modern chosen family narratives by decades, exploring themes of economic survival and artificial kinship that would become central to contemporary television. McClanahan's performance as the optimistic Ginger Nell showcased the comedic warmth that would later make her famous as Blanche Devereaux on The Golden Girls. The show's failure taught Lear that Depression-era comedy required more than quirky characters. It needed authentic emotional stakes. Number 6. Nanny and The Professor, 1970 to 1971. Premise: mysterious British nanny with psychic abilities arrives unannounced to care for a widowed professor's 3 children. Juliet Mills starred as Phoebe Figolilli, a beautiful young Englishwoman who appeared at the Everett household without references, but with an uncanny ability to know things before they happened. Unlike the overt magic of Bewitched or I Dream of Jeannie, Nanny's supernatural abilities were subtle and ambiguous. A tinkling musical cue whenever her intuition kicked in, knowledge of people's names before introductions, and perfect timing for arriving exactly when needed. The series aired on ABC from January 1970 to December 1971, initially succeeding due to its Friday night placement between The Brady Bunch and The Partridge Family. This scheduling created a perfect family-friendly block that captured the target demographic of children and preteens. The show's ratings collapsed in its 3rd season when ABC moved it to Monday nights opposite Gunsmoke and Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. Richard Long played Professor Harold Everett, a mathematics teacher whose rational scientific worldview constantly clashed with Nanny's inexplicable abilities. The character dynamics explored the eternal conflict between logic and intuition, with Long's skeptical professor serving as audience surrogate for viewers who questioned Nanny's true nature. The children included future Real Housewife Kim Richards as youngest daughter Prudence. The series hinted that Nanny might be centuries old and something other than human, but these tantalizing mysteries were never resolved before cancellation. Unlike other magical sitcoms, Nanny and the Professor refused to explain its supernatural elements, maintaining ambiguity that elevated it above typical fantasy comedies. The show spawned 2 animated TV movies in 1972 and 1973, where Nanny's magic became explicitly stated rather than subtly implied. Number 5. The Paul Lynde Show, 1972 to 1973. Premise: sarcastic father endlessly battles his liberal daughter and her husband in middle American culture clash comedy. Paul Lynde, Hollywood Square's Center Square champion, received his own family sitcom despite everyone's better judgment. Lindy played middle-aged attorney Paul Sims, constantly at odds with his daughter's hippie husband while delivering the acidic one-liners that made him famous. The show attempted to capture the generational tension of All in the Family, but filtered through Lindy's distinctively campy sensibility. ABC's decision to cast Lynde as a suburban father represented television's most surreal miscalculation of the 1970s. Lindy's persona was built on snide observations and barely concealed disdain for conventional domesticity, making him spectacularly unsuited for traditional family comedy. The script struggled to reconcile his sharp wit with the requirements of wholesome sitcom plotting. Contemporary ratings showed viewers liked Lynde but hated The Paul Lynde Show, a devastating review that identified the central problem. Lindy's comedic gifts worked in small doses on variety shows and game shows, but a weekly series exposed the limitations of his one-note persona. The character conflicts felt forced rather than organic, with Lynde delivering punchlines instead of inhabiting a believable father figure. ABC canceled the show after 1 season, then recruited Lynde for Temperatures Rising in 1973 to 74. proving the network learned nothing from the first failure. The Paul Lynde Show's legacy serves as a cautionary tale about building sitcoms around performers whose talents don't translate to domestic comedy. Linde's genius lay in subverting family values, not celebrating them through conventional sitcom structure. Channel 4, Holmes and Yo-Yo, 1976. Premise: bumbling detective partners with an android police officer in crime-fighting comedy that nobody asked for. ABC's attempt to combine buddy cop shows with science fiction resulted in this bizarre hybrid starring Richard B. Schull as Detective Holmes and John Schuck as Yo-Yo, a robot police officer disguised as a human partner. The series represented network television's first serious attempt to integrate artificial intelligence themes into mainstream comedy, decades before such concepts became culturally relevant. The show aired Saturday nights from September to December 1976, competing against CBS's powerful variety programming and NBC's established hits. Holmes and Yo-Yo suffered from an identity crisis that plagued many 1976 hybrid shows, unsure whether it was cop comedy, science fiction, or workplace sitcom. The writing attempted to mine humor from Yo-Yo's robotic quirks while maintaining the procedural elements of police work. John Schuck, previously known for his role as Sergeant Enright on McMillan and Wife, brought surprising warmth to the android character despite the limitations of 1970s special effects. Yo-Yo's malfunctions provided most of the show's comedy, with Schuck's physical comedy skills, elevating material that could have been disastrous in less capable hands. The character anticipated later android characters like Data from Star Trek: The Next Generation. The production values were remarkably low, even by mid-1970s television standards, with Yo-Yo's futuristic technology looking like repurposed household appliances. The series failed because it couldn't decide whether to embrace its ridiculous premise or play it straight, resulting in comedy that satisfied neither sci-fi fans nor police procedural audiences. Holmes and Yo-Yo's brief run demonstrated that American television wasn't ready for android characters until special effects technology caught up with creative ambition. Chapter 3, The Girl with Something Extra, 1973 to 1974. Premise: newlywed woman with telepathic abilities tries to manage married life while reading everyone's thoughts. Sally Field starred as Sally Burton, a young bride whose psychic powers created constant complications in her marriage to lawyer John Burton, John Davidson. The series explored the domestic challenges of supernatural abilities in realistic settings, anticipating themes that would later drive shows like Medium and The Mentalist. Field's charm and comedic timing elevated material that could have been routine fantasy sitcom fare. The show aired on NBC Friday nights from September 1973 to May 1974, competing against established hits like The Brady Bunch and The Partridge Family on ABC. Sally's telepathic abilities were played for both comedy and genuine relationship drama, with her husband struggling to maintain privacy in a marriage where his wife could read his thoughts. The concept provided endless opportunities for misunderstandings and romantic complications. Field's performance demonstrated the acting skills that would later win her Academy Awards, bringing emotional depth to a character who could have been merely a gimmick. The series treated Sally's abilities as both gift and curse, exploring the ethical implications of involuntary mind reading in everyday situations. Episodes dealt with Sally accidentally discovering secrets she wished she hadn't learned. The writing balanced supernatural elements with realistic relationship dynamics, creating comedy that felt grounded despite its fantastical premise. The show's failure reflected network television's difficulty marketing supernatural romance to mainstream audiences in the early 1970s. The Girl with Something Extra demonstrated that Field could carry a series solo, establishing her as a leading lady years before her movie career took off. Number 2. We've Got Each Other, 1977 to 1978. Premise: role reversal marriage comedy where the wife works as a photographer while her house husband stays home writing copy. CBS premiered this progressive domestic comedy in the fall of 1977, starring Oliver Clark and Beverly Archer as Stuart and Judy Hibbert, a young married couple who defied traditional gender roles decades before such arrangements became socially acceptable. Stuart worked as a freelance copywriter from their apartment, while Judy pursued her career as a professional photographer, creating conflicts that anticipated modern dual-career relationship dynamics. The series aired Saturday nights at 8:30 p.m. following The Bob Newhart Show, inheriting a sophisticated audience that appreciated character-driven comedy. The show's feminist themes were revolutionary for 1977 network television, presenting a wife whose career ambitions took precedence over domestic responsibilities. Stewart's character challenged masculine stereotypes by embracing housework and emotional labor typically assigned to women. Beverly Archer brought intelligence and determination to Judy, creating a female character who refused to apologize for her professional success. The marriage felt authentically modern, with both partners negotiating career priorities and domestic responsibilities in ways that reflected real social changes happening in American families. Episodes dealt with workplace sexism, role confusion, and the economic pressures facing young couples. The production values were typical of CBS sitcoms of the era, with multi-camera studio shooting that emphasized character interactions over visual style. The writing explored themes that wouldn't become mainstream until decades later, making the show ahead of its time in ways that may have contributed to its commercial failure. We've Got Each Other proved that television audiences in 1977 weren't ready for fully realized role reversal comedy, despite the cultural changes already transforming American marriages. Jacques 1, Wait Till Your Father Gets Home, 1972 to 1974. Premise: animated middle-class family navigates generational conflicts and social changes in the early 1970s. Hanna-Barbera's first primetime animated sitcom since The Flintstones targeted adult audiences with topical humor about the generational divide tearing apart American families. The show starred Tom Bosley as the voice of conservative father Harry Boyle, constantly battling his liberal children over civil rights, women's liberation, and Vietnam War protests. The animation format allowed the series to tackle controversial subjects that live-action family sitcoms couldn't touch. The series premiered in syndication rather than network television, allowing local stations to schedule it during prime access time slots. This distribution strategy proved prescient, as the show's political content would have faced network censorship standards that undermined its satirical edge. The Boyle family represented Middle America in transition, with traditional values colliding against social revolution. Tom Bosley's vocal performance captured the bewilderment of fathers whose authority was being challenged by cultural forces beyond their comprehension. The character of Harry Boyle was neither villain nor hero, but a confused patriarch trying to maintain family unity while the world changed around him. Episodes dealt with draft resistance, interracial dating, and women's career ambitions with surprising sophistication. The animation style was limited by television budgets, but effective for character-driven comedy that relied on dialogue rather than visual spectacle. Hanna-Barbera's decision to create adult-oriented animation anticipated later successes, like The Simpsons and Family Guy, by demonstrating that cartoons could address serious social issues through satirical humor. Wait Till Your Father Gets Home succeeded because it acknowledged that American families were genuinely divided by the social upheavals of the early 1970s. The show's legacy lies in proving that animation could be a legitimate venue for social commentary, paving the way for the animated sitcom renaissance that would emerge 2 decades later. These 11 sitcoms prove that 1970s television was willing to experiment with family structures, gender roles, and social conventions in ways that would make modern network executives break into cold sweats. They failed commercially because they were too weird, too progressive, or too honest about the chaos lurking beneath suburban respectability? Which of these forgotten family experiments deserves streaming resurrection? Did we miss your favorite one-season wonder from the decade of disco and dysfunction? And here's the brain-melting question. If these shows were too strange for the 1970s, when television was supposedly more daring and creative than today, what does that say about our current appetite for truly innovative family comedy? Sometimes the best ideas arrive 50 years too early.